Okay, I'll try again. Yes, yes, it was. I was expecting for it to take longer, but we figured out that. So what we're trying to do, because I didn't go to the service last night, and so he videoed it on his iPhone, and his iPhone won't talk to my PC, or I don't know how to get it to talk to my PC. So he's going to try and figure it out this afternoon, how to upload it from his iPhone to I guess his PC, and then send it to me somehow so that I can upload it on my YouTube. I don't know. Technology. Do they deliberately make it difficult, or are they just stupid and incompetent in how they design it? I think it's the first one. They're not that stupid. They deliberately make it so that it's difficult to use, so that we get frustrated, so that we all only buy the one that works, that most people use. So Microsoft dominates the market. He's essentially either bought out or destroyed all of his competition, and he's bribed people to use his product. Yeah. Oh, yes. If he uploads it to the cloud, that is the other way. Good point. Jamie. This is my Jamie, the Jamie that lives here locally is the guy that videoed it, not the Jamie we all know. Send him that email now. So, yeah, Kevin, if you want to hop on, g'day, Erica. I've given you the StreamYard link. Let me... God, why? How come I put the StreamYard link in, then it doesn't appear? Is that YouTube being stupid? There it is. Pin. Right. I want to show you this movie. This is especially for those who are in America, but everybody can learn from this because the same thing is happening everywhere. So this movie is a new movie, documentary really, but movie created by Salem Now, or people that it's on Salem Now. I'll give you the link to that as well. I highly recommend, if you can afford it, buy this movie. G'day, Kev, again.
Yep. I'm back in the flesh, baby.
And let me link this and let's listen to it. And Kevin, feel free to share what you were sharing before again. Yeah, we'll do this as a new stream. We'll start again from the beginning, basically. I just want to play this movie. So you might remember this woman from earlier when they were painting Black Lives Matter and defund the police was being pushed, this neo-Marxist agenda of destroying Western civilization, and she was fighting back by throwing black paint on this stupid this stupid obsession that people have with trying to divide us by race. It's the devil. Yep. Black Lives Matter movement. Black Lives Matter, for sure. But the Black Lives Matter movement is demonic. She's absolutely right.
I do. Why take the knee? Who are you bowing to?
Why take the knee? Who are you bowing to? To Jesus Christ? No. No, 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 no. You're bowing to the devil.
So, Graham, my question would be is, how did that lady get past the barricade there? What if this was done on purpose? They let her in, to make the news, to further divide, to try to make Christians look like they oppose this demonic movement, to try to make people think Christians are racist.
Well, except that she's black. If she was white, that narrative would work a bit better, but she's black.
Right.
So the best that they can say about her is not that she's racist, but she's brainwashed and deluded. She's still a slave of the white man. But the fact is that it's the blacks who follow the Democrat Party and this agenda that are the slaves of the white man. She's a free thinker. And sure, they may have let her in thinking that this would play badly for us. I don't think it does. I think this is an excellent example of what it takes to stand up, and you will get arrested for speaking the truth. Now, I don't necessarily agree with how she's done it. I don't think this is the best way to get the message across, but I'm glad that she stood up, and it's still a symbol for me of defiance of leftist demagoguery, if I can put it that way. This is what should have been happening back when slavery was around. That not just blacks but whites were fighting against it, and there were blacks and whites fighting against it back then. But who was the first slave owner? A white man or a black man? It was a black man.
Yes,
a black man was the first slave owner in America.
Oh, in America, yeah, okay. I know the Africans were selling their own people to the whites, if you want to call them that.
Well, yeah, that's true as well. So it was blacks being, not racist. I don't even know the right word, but it was blacks selling blacks to Arabs, really, Arab traders, and then that was getting sold on to whites. And where has slavery been stopped in our world? In the white world. It's the white world that stopped slavery. It was white men that died in the American Civil War to stop slavery. Whites fighting whites and blacks fighting blacks. This is not a race issue. And whites, you know where the word slave comes from? Here's another interesting thing. You know where the word slave comes from? It's the same root as the word Slav, the Slavic people who are white people. The first slaves, where we get the word from, not that there weren't slaves before that, but the origin of the word slave is from the Slavic people being enslaved.
Oh, I didn't know that.
White people. So the word slave literally means a white person.
If you look throughout history, I think probably every ethnic group at one point or time was subjected to slavery.
Yeah, they enslaved their own people. They enslaved other people. Whites enslaved blacks. Blacks enslaved whites and Asians. Everybody was enslaved by everybody. It's always happened.
Yep.
It's not a race issue, and it never has been. The Democrats are trying to make it a race issue. Now, in America, it was a race issue that there were white people who said that black people were inferior, but there were white people who said that black people weren't inferior. So it's still not a race issue because not all white people think that way. It was some white people, and us conservatives are the ones getting blamed for leftists in the past, white leftists enslaving people, and so they tar us white conservatives, and it's like, yeah, but the white leftists are still enslaving you black people today, just in a different way. And we're fighting to free you, and you're calling us the bigots. We're the ones that are still fighting for freedom, just like we were back then, just like Abraham Lincoln was. Conservatives are on the side of Abraham Lincoln. People want to paint Abraham Lincoln as a progressive. No. Abraham Lincoln was a conservative. He wanted to take America back to the Constitution, where it was the progressives who were ignoring the Constitution back then. The progressives were the slave owners. And believed in evolution, by the way.
You know what's sad? They still have zero evidence for that stupid theory.
Well, yeah, that's the other problem as well.
Where
and
are
evolution is still a racist theory.
Yes.
Evolution. Let me go. Evolution of man. And sexist, by the way. Have you noticed that it's only men? If you want to play this game, I can play the game too.
Well, Darwin's book, they edited the title because it sounded racist. It was now it's just called The Origin of Species, but the original title, well, how did it go? Is The Origin of Species in the Struggle for the Life for the Favored Races? Something like that?
Yeah, but that's still the official title. They didn't
Yeah,
edit the title. They just ignore that bit of the title.
No, I mean, if you bought the book today, it would just say Origin of Species. They got rid of all the rest of it.
Yeah, simply because they don't want to show you.
Yes.
Open image in new tab. But that's still the official title.
Right.
They just don't tell you that it's the official title. Now, here's a picture depicting evolution. Tell me what you notice about it. Let me just open it up. Consequence of evolution, this picture is called. What do you notice about that picture? We're going from primate to human. What can you see about this human compared to these?
Oh. He's like kind of hairy.
Okay, hairiness. What else can you notice? In relation to racism, what do you notice?
His skin tone.
Yep, black to white. Black is less evolved, white is most evolved. That's what evolution still teaches today. They just don't always present it as clearly as I just said it. But that's exactly what this picture is showing. The less evolved you are, the darker you are. The more evolved you are, the lighter skinned you are. That is still a primary tenet of evolution, but they never admit it.
Ridiculous.
And that's why it's racist to compare a black person to a chimpanzee, but not to compare a white person to a chimpanzee. Why is it racist to call a black person a chimpanzee or an ape or a primate or whatever and make noises to a black person, but not to a white person? They compared George W. Bush to a chimpanzee and nobody said it was racist because he's white. Right? Because still in people's minds, people still think that white people are more evolved and we don't see them as apes. Whereas a black person, you compare them to a chimpanzee, you're saying they're less evolved. You're admitting what evolution actually teaches, and that's racist. Because evolution is racist, not because it's more offensive to compare. The only reason it's more offensive to compare a black person to a chimpanzee than a white person is because of evolution. Evolution is inherently racist.
Yeah.
And people are going to take clips of what I just said and try and make out that I'm racist. No, I said nothing racist. I pointed out that evolution is racist. I'm saying that blacks and whites are equal. And yes, I am using the term black because if you're going to use the term white, why not use black? See, another thing that's racist is to say that black is racist, but it's okay to say white. Well, that's racism. If you're going to say white, it's okay to say black.
Well, Graham, would you agree that technically there is no such thing as a white person or a black person?
Hallelujah, brother. Hallelujah. Preach it. Keep going.
Because take a white sheet of paper and put it up next to your arm. Is your arm white? No.
Nope.
No.
Nope. In fact, let's do it. Let's do it. I have used that exact same illustration at a youth group here in Kununurra, where I have said to the kids, I'm not white. There's white sheet of paper. There's my skin. I am not white. I'll even go on the other side of my arm. So there's the inside of my arm, which is lighter colored, still not white.
Yep. And the same thing is true with quote.
And I find the darkest kid in the youth group, because some of them are really, really dark, like black dark. And I get some actual black and put it up against their skin, and you go, well, actually, you're really dark brown, aren't you?
Right.
And I've taught the kids that. I've taught the kids none of us are white or black. You won't find a single person who's white or black. You'll find people who are really, really, really dark. But if you get some actual black and put it up against their skin, you go, oh, it's just a really dark brown. And the same thing with a white person. The whitest person you can find, you put a white piece of paper up next to them and you go, well, it's just a really, 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 really light brown. It's not white. There's no black or white.
Exactly.
We're all brown. Every single one of us is brown.
Yep, just different shades of it. That's all.
So hail the brown races. God bless us brown people. And like Conrad says, we should be burning. If we want to get rid of racism, let's burn Darwin's books. And let's pull down all his statues. And let's remove him from our universities. And not just Darwin, Marx as well, because Marx considered the black races inferior.
So did Adolf Hitler.
And, Adolf Hitler, yeah. But he was following in the footsteps of Marx.
Yeah.
Because, and did you notice every single one of them's a white guy? Darwin's a white guy. Marx is a white guy. But they're the okay white guys because they agree with the leftist agenda, which divides people by race and subjugates black people. Whereas we conservatives, we're fighting for freedom. Let me keep playing this video. Yeah. It's got some really, 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 really good content in it. And I really hope that it starts to change things in America. There's many other videos that you can watch as well. Salome has got a lot of very good movies.
I bow. I'm not racist. You're basically telling these Democrats you submit to their agenda,
and I will not. I never will. Even when it comes over here to Australia in whatever form that the Greens and Labor present, which is the two parties on the left. The two biggest parties on the left side of politics.
Man, you guys got two leftist parties over there?
Yeah, so because of our voting system, the difference in our voting systems means that we can have more parties that can get elected because we have preferential voting. So it means that you can put a small party first, and if enough people put a small party first, then at least some of their people can get into what you would call Congress. So we've got the House of... We have the same as you. We have our lower house is the House of Representatives and our upper house is the Senate, but we call it Parliament, not Congress. So in federally and in each of our states, we have members from, there's the Nationals, which is the other supposedly conservative party. They're the smaller party on the conservative side, supposedly conservative side. The major party on the conservative side are called the Liberals in the old definition of the word liberal, meaning liberty, freedom. That's what's conservatism supposed to be all about. And on the left, the major party is Labor. And then the smaller party is the Greens. They're extreme environmentalists, neo-Marxists, watermelons, green on the outside, red on the inside. And yeah, they're trying to, they're worse. They're the extreme end of the Democrats. They're AOC. And in fact, we have Greens party members who are just as stupid as AOC. And I deliberately use the word stupid there. Absolutely 100% stupid. They know nothing, just like AOC. Oh, and the ones who do know something, they know exactly what they're doing. They're evil, just like the extreme end of the Democrat Party. There are evil people manipulating people like AOC. So, yeah, those are our four major parties. Then there's another party called One Nation, which I'm mostly affiliated with, and we probably have a federal election coming up, and I expect to be running for One Nation if I'm still in Kununurra, but I probably won't be in Kununurra, so I might not get to run because I'll be transitioning from from Kununurra to Queensland. But One Nation as a general rule is closest to the best bits of the GOP.
Okay.
And not perfect, but are trying to fight for freedom. And then there's heaps of other smaller parties. Some of them have some seats in various places. They sometimes get into the federal parliament. But yeah, having more than two parties is common in Australia and always has been because of our preferential voting system. Whereas you guys have first past the post, or what we call first past the post here in Australia, which means that you necessarily only end up with two parties, pretty much. Because otherwise you cancel each other out. With your system, if you have three parties and two of them are similar, they cancel each other's vote out to make the other party that they both disagree with more likely to win. Whereas in our system, those preferences would flow to each other. So those two parties, one of them would be more likely to win than the third party because they agree with each other more. And I think that's a better system. Where although there are people within my own party who want to scrap the preferential system. And I say to them, if you scrap the preferential system, one nation will disappear. Because Liberal and Labor will work together anyway. And it'll make it even easier for them to work together if you get rid of preferential. But anyway, that's another whole complex topic. Along with compulsory voting, which we have in Australia, you get fined if you don't vote.
Oh, wow. They force you to vote?
Well, I would argue they don't actually force you to vote because they can't check whether you voted or not. You cross your name off the list. You go into a polling place. You don't have to put anything on the paper. You don't have to enter a valid vote. You just have to turn up and get your name crossed off. You just have to go through the motions. But yes, I guess you can say yes, we're forced to vote.
Oh.
And people say that's wrong, it's undemocratic. I say that it's actually good for democracy because then it's everyone having a say. And people say, yeah, but you're forcing people to vote who don't know anything about it. Well, educate them then, because the people who want to destroy our country are still going to vote. And it's
Right.
making sure that people get involved in the political system. I would love to force people to do more things than that. I'd love to force people to register for a political party. I'd love to force people to get an education, civics education, which, you know,
I wouldn't force anyone to do anything they don't want to because I believe in freedom. Like everyone should be able to pursue their life the way they want to. It's just you're going to have to give an account for what you do with your life. So
yeah, but that's why our countries go downhill, is because yeah. Anyway,
but
that's another whole topic.
I used to vote and be very passionate about politics, but when I came to the realization that both parties are owned by the same group of people, I stopped caring because I started believing the whole system was just rigged.
Yes, and I understand that's your view. I disagree with it. I think that's partly true, but I also think it's partly false.
But when I did believe that my vote counted, I made sure I was out there doing it. But now I'm not, I don't necessarily believe that anymore. So I just stay out of it because I feel like my vote doesn't matter to them.
It doesn't matter to them, but you still got to fight. It's like being a Christian. Yeah, that doesn't matter to them either, but you still fight. Does that mean we're going to win?
Because that has eternal ramifications, whereas my vote, whether it counts or not, that's just something temporal. I mean, I feel like the gospel would be more important than that.
In what realm is abortion legal? In your preaching of the gospel or in politics? It's politics where abortion is legal. So it does have eternal consequences. Now, I understand the gospel's more important. But we should still be fighting back against abortion. We should still be fighting back against critical race theory. We should still be fighting back against the government forcing people to pay taxes. See, this is the thing. If you don't force people to get involved and have a civil education, the left is going to win and force people. They're going to force their agenda down people's throats. It's just whose agenda wins. And I would suggest that we need to fight for freedom and fighting for
the leftists control the school curriculum that's taught here in America in the public schools.
Yep.
You're not allowed to pray or anything. They teach evolution in every science class. They used to teach it in biology, but now it's also taught in earth science. And go ahead.
I hope you'll accept me for saying this, but it's because people like you aren't fighting back. I'm not trying to say that to be nasty. That's just the reality that I believe, is that if we don't fight back, that's exactly what's going to happen. That's why we need to be engaged and we need to be fighting. And yes, the GOP are corrupt. So keep fighting until they're not.
Well, I think we could fight at a local level, like a state level, where we say, hey, here, we don't want this.
Exactly.
As far as federal goes, I don't think nothing matters. They're going to do it anyway, regardless of what the vote says.
Kevin, if you've got people fighting locally in every precinct across Australia, across America, Australia's the same thing, but in every precinct or every province or every whatever across America, or at least even 50% of them, you can turn things around federally. Don't worry about the federal. That will take care of itself over time. You fight in your local area. Fight for what's right. Now, don't let politics become more important than the gospel. Completely agree. So there's a balance here, but you do need to fight for what's right in politics. And you can only fight in your local area unless you're Trump and have billions of dollars that you can spend running to be president, and you don't. Very few of us do. And if you do have that, you're probably right. He's probably part of it. But if there's more people fighting locally, and if the more that people are fighting locally, the more that this will turn around. Do we have time to turn it around? I don't know, but that's not the point. The point isn't, we're not responsible for the end goal.
Okay. So if I'm right and the whole system is corrupt, it's been shadow government's taken over, right? So if we do fight back at a local level, are you saying that eventually these people will give in?
Oh, no, they'll keep fighting, but you'll win. Because all that the Nazis needed to win was less than 10% of the population were enrolled in the Nazi Party and actively fighting for Nazism. 80% of people plus sat in the middle and said, leave me alone, I'll fly the swastika, I'll bow the knee. You know, that's what we're seeing today. Fly the BLM flag, bow the knee. Just leave me alone. I don't want to get involved. And on the other side, the people that were actively fighting back against Nazism were a smaller number than the number of Nazis. If that number had have been larger, the Nazis wouldn't have won. And this has always been the way through history. There's a small number on one side fighting to destroy, and a small number on the other side fighting for freedom and fighting back against salt and light. If the number on, and it doesn't have to be exact numbers, but if the number on the good side is larger than the number on the evil side, then good wins. But if they're smaller or less active or whatever, like whatever metric, it's a complicated metric, and I haven't done the analysis, but just the general point is that good can triumph over evil if they don't give up, and if enough people are fighting for it. And that's my argument. You don't even need 10%. You need less than 10%.
These people are so rich; they have their hands in everything. They own so much.
And God is bigger. God is bigger.
Right. I agree.
And he will destroy their plans if we fight back. But there's not enough people fighting back, and there's not enough people that actually understand what good means. So there are people fighting back, but in the wrong way for the wrong reasons. And so we need to actually be fighting for good, one. Two, there needs to be enough of us. But even if there's not enough of us, that doesn't mean we don't fight back. I will fight on my own if I can, for as long as I can. And at times I get discouraged and I want to give up. But I never want to get to that point where I give up. I hope I never get to that point where I say, it's a waste of time, it's all corrupt, because I have God and I am commanded to be salt and light. Doesn't matter how corrupt it becomes. That means it's all the more important for me to fight back because I'm salt and light.
All right.
And if everything's dark, my tiny, tiny, tiny little light shines brighter.
Well, let me play devil's advocate for a moment. If you
go for it.
Okay, so let's look at back 2,000 years ago in biblical times, right? I would say that probably the Roman Empire is probably one of the most satanic governments that ever existed. Would you agree?
Yep.
Okay. So when God himself was literally walking among us on the earth,
Yes.
he didn't, and I can't find anywhere in scripture where he commanded the Israelites to oppose the Roman government. He said, render to Caesar the things that are Caesar and the things to God which belong to God. And he was just encouraging them to follow him. I don't.
Yep. Yeah, and it's a good point, well made. But there's two things that I think people overlook when they think like that. One is they didn't have democracy, so how could they fight back? Only with violence, and we're not to fight with violence. But in our Western democracies, we do have a way to fight back and to speak up.
Or so
And there were a couple of ways in which Jesus did promote people fighting back politically. So he tells the parable of the unjust judge. Are you aware of that one?
Yeah, why don't you read it to me, though? It's been a while.
So this is one way in which people could fight back, by pleading for justice, saying, well, the law says this and you're not doing it, so I'm going to keep nagging you in a humble way, going to keep pleading for justice.
And that's another point I want to make. When Obama was our president, he broke so many different laws. There was no punishment for any of it. Police here abuse the citizens and violate our Fourth Amendment rights. And he pointed out to the judges, and there's nothing done. They have what's called qualified immunity.
Yep.
So if they violate you, they get a slap on the wrist and they're fine. There is no justice. That's when the system is rigged.
So yes, you can always look at things where you go, our world is unjust, and it always will be until Jesus comes and reigns.
Right.
But don't look at that. Look for how God is working, and look for how you can be an agent of salt and light in our world. And he spake a parable unto them to this end, that men ought always to pray and not to faint. So his primary purpose is us pleading with God as judge. But then he gives this parable, which he's saying something about politics in this parable, saying there was in a city a judge which feared not God, neither regarded man. Completely unjust. Hopeless, isn't it?
Yes.
Doesn't fear God and doesn't even fear man. So what can we do? Well, there was a widow in that city, and she came unto him, saying, avenge me of mine adversary, and he would not for a while. But afterward he said within himself, though I fear not God nor man, I fear this woman. Yet because this widow troubleth me, I will avenge her, lest by her continual coming she weary me. Did she do anything wrong? No, she was pleading for justice. So avenge me
the man was
of
getting
mine
annoyed.
Adversary. Sorry?
She constantly kept coming over and over, and the guy was getting annoyed, so he finally did something about it.
Yeah, but she did it in a humble way. She did it with... So Daniel is an example as well. So they told him, you've got to eat this. Now, Daniel could have said, well, there's nothing I can do about it. But he made an appeal. I understand that you've been commanded, but just let me test this little thing. Me and my 3 friends, just give us the biblical Jewish diet. And let's see which one of us turns out better. And so he tested it, I think it was for a month. And they learnt better. They looked better because they weren't eating the king's meat. Now, that king's meat probably had blood in it, I would suspect. So we're back to that topic again. But he said, no, I'm not going to do that. Can I try this diet over here? Now, what if the guy had have said no? What would Daniel have done then? Would he have eaten of the meat? I would suggest that he wouldn't have. But he still would have been humble about it. He would have said to him, look, I respect your authority. I'm not trying to overthrow you. You're in that position, and I'm not trying to change that. But can we please try and find some other way? And that's how we can still fight back, even when democracy disappears. But your democracy hasn't disappeared yet. There are still avenues that you have that are different than what was happening in Jesus' day. It's still a different system of government than absolute dictatorship.
That's
And
true.
even absolute dictatorship isn't absolute dictatorship. There's no such thing because humans are imperfect. Even when you're trying to impose an absolute dictatorship, you can't because humans are imperfect. So there's always, always, always avenues of appeal. There are always something that we can do to try and fight back. What's the number one important issue that you would like to see changed in politics? What's the worst thing, the biggest problem with the political system that you have and what is happening in America because of the corruption of politics in America? And I'm going to leave you to answer that. My answer would be abortion. That would be my number one
I have a lot of problems. Yeah, I strongly disagree with abortion. I think that abortion clinics, those are actually sacrifices, actually.
Yep. Is there a way? So the point that I'm getting to, is there a way that you can fight back against it? Well, is there, and that's what I would encourage you to look for.
Well, there are videos, people online, Christians go around there and they have signs and they try to put scriptures and try to show the people coming into the clinics that, that's a human. And even the word fetus itself is Latin for baby.
Yes. So John Barros is an example of someone who does it. He stands outside an abortion clinic and pleads with people. I've got a number of friends on Facebook that stand outside abortion clinics and appeal with the people going in. And sometimes people listen, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they can go a whole day and not a single person has listened to them. But other days they'll get someone or 2 people or 5 people that will say, okay, I'm not going to kill my baby. And if they spend their whole life, 40, 50 years, 60, 70 years, standing outside an abortion clinic and only one person listens to them, that was worth it. That's one soul saved. But the other thing that they're doing is preaching the gospel to these people. Yes. So please don't kill your baby. We can save your baby. We'll do everything that we can to help you. But the more important issue is that you need to know Jesus Christ. And we don't know. It's like that. You were on my stream when I played that movie about the guy that was on George Street in Sydney and hopped out and said, where are you going to spend eternity? And just shoved a tract in their hand. And some people thought he was being rude, but hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of souls were saved because of that man's ministry. And he never heard back from a single one of them until within weeks of him dying. Someone came back to him and said, I've started hearing all of these testimonies from people who said that they were saved because of your ministry. And it may not be that we'll hear about it on this earth. We don't know what God will do. We may only hear about it in heaven. But we need to fight back against evil in every way we can, as much as we can,
would you
for
say
our whole life.
Standing outside of the clinic with signs and presenting the gospel is more productive than going to your local voting booth and putting a vote in, whether, if it does or doesn't count, which could be argued. But I would say that probably standing outside the clinic itself would be more effective, because at least that way someone is hearing you, whereas you're putting the vote in and the scumbags just don't care anyway. It don't matter.
For me, it's not an either or, do both. But don't just vote on election day. Get involved in your local party and make sure that it's someone who actually will vote against abortion when they get the opportunity and won't cave to the GOP leadership. It's not an either or, do both. Because how much time does it take to go vote? Very little. If it doesn't mean anything, well, I'm not convinced that it doesn't mean anything. I still think it means something, but voting on its own doesn't mean a lot, because you don't know who you're really voting for. If you get involved at the grassroots level in your local Republican Party, and make sure that someone who actually cares about stopping abortion, not someone who's just going to say it, but someone who is passionately anti-abortion.
Right. Well, we could get into that topic sometime if you like, but a lot of times when we start talking about that kind of stuff, they take your channel down.
Sure. And then I'll move over to Twitch, and we'll continue on Twitch.
Have you ever heard of Russian Vids? He talks a lot about political corruptions and stuff. Or there's another channel called A Call for an Uprising. He's had to make 10 different channels because they talk about government corruption and how it's sold out to Satan. They always take your stuff down. They don't. So if it's not true and there's no big deal, how come they're not allowed to just voice it? Who cares if it's wrong, right? Who cares?
So the meeting is supposed to start in 10 minutes, I've just noticed, so I really have to rush off. I haven't even had a shower yet. I'm going to be late for the meeting, which is okay, I suppose. But I'm supposed to be there to record the sermon. So I need to get going. Yes, sorry.
Right, you cut me off. I was just about to start talking about how evil taxes is, how it's theft. But all right.
Hallelujah. Completely agree. Taxation is theft.
Yep.
Anyway, I have to go. G'day, Ajmad. I've got to say hello and goodbye because I have to go. Are you there, Ajmad? Hello, Ajmad. Goodbye,
Yes.
Ajmad.
Yes,
Oh, there he is.
Yes, wait, just a minute. I've just finished my prayer with a group. We have a group because of lockdown.
Ajmad, I have to go. Our meeting is starting in 8 minutes, 7 minutes, and I have to have a shower. I've just realized the time. So I'm going to be recording the sermon this morning and uploading it when I come back. Jamie's going to be sending me the sermon from last night, which was morning your time in America, and I'll upload that as well. But I have to go. I have to shut this stream down. Thanks for joining me. I'll catch you next time. Please watch that. Please watch that link. The Great American. It's a trailer for a movie that's just been released on Salem now. Please go watch that. If you can buy it, please buy it. See yous all, and I'll catch you later, Ajmad. I should be back in a few hours. Bye.